Story we've been covering since 2023, the deadly shooting of an innocent bystander at the Holyoke Mall. The state's highest court now ruling the suspect in the case can argue he fired the gun in self-defense. Welcome, everyone, to Western Mass News on this Wednesday. I'm Amanda Martin Ryan. Western Mass News reporter Madison Lazowski is live in studio after getting answers on what this court decision means. Madison?
Yeah, Amanda, in January of 2023, Kenneth Santana Rodriguez was originally charged with first-degree murder after authorities say he shot and killed 33-year-old Trung Michael Tran, who worked at Touch of Beauty hair and nail salon. However, court documents state that the shooting only happened after another man entered the salon, started an argument, showed his firearm, and threatened Santana Rodriguez. Documents state that Santana Rodriguez responded to this threat by drawing his gun and firing it twice, one of those stray bullets striking Tran in the chest. From the start, Santana Rodriguez's attorney argued that this was not an instance of first-degree murder, but rather a clear case of self-defense. Attorney Joseph Pacella tells Western Mass News that you have to put yourself in the shoes of the shooter to determine the intent of the situation. In this case, he says Santana Rodriguez was antagonized and attacked first and responded accordingly, unfortunately taking the life of Tran, an innocent bystander. Attorney Pacella explained that for a case to be classified as first-degree murder, it must fall under one of the following categories. The killing has to be premeditated, done with extreme atrocity, or committed in the commission of a felony.
None of those apply here is what the defense is saying, because this gentleman was essentially attacked and shot back and didn't have plans to shoot at anybody that day or to do anything nefarious. It's essentially an accident.
Just yesterday, the state Supreme Judicial Court sided with Santana Rodriguez and his attorneys, stating that, quote, unless the Commonwealth can prove that the act was reckless, the only possible conviction is involuntary manslaughter, not murder. So for this case, attorneys claim that if Santana Rodriguez didn't act, he could have been the victim of gun violence himself, showing that the incident was not premeditated. We have reached out to the district attorney's office for comment, but we have not yet heard back. And coming up at 6, we have more on why this is such a landmark decision for the state and why the Gun Owners Action League is calling this a huge victory for their organization and for all Massachusetts gun owners. Reporting live in studio, Madison Lazowski, Western Mass News.